tonight's April 15th, 2020 regular school committee meeting and budget hearing. The April 15th, 2020 school committee meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts order on March 12th, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20. The public will not be allowed to physically access the school committee meeting. As a preliminary matter, my name is Keith Sullivan. I am the chairman of the Tewksbury School Committee. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me, and that they are giving consent to be recorded this evening. As I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mrs. Demos?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass?
Aye.
Mr. Libby?
Aye.
Mr. Malone?
Aye.
And Mrs. Regan?
Aye.
Thank you. And good evening again. This open meeting of the Tewksbury School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature a live public comment. Citizens were notified via the public posting of this meeting that they could submit comments or questions regarding topics on the agenda through either myself, the chair, or the superintendent of schools, Mr. Chris Malone. For this meeting, the Tewksbury School Committee is convening by Google Meet as posted on the agenda on the school and town's website and will be recorded. The school committee packet is available upon request by emailing Gail Johnson at gjohnson@tewksburyk12.ma.us. All supporting materials have been provided to members of this body and are available to the public by request after the meeting. Before we turn to the first agenda item, please allow me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each member by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. If anyone has a comment or question, it can be submitted in the chat window and will be recognized by myself. You may also click the raise your hand icon to get into the queue. All chat questions and comments will be included in the recordings of the meeting. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you, and please state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a discussion with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. All voting taking place during tonight's meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. As for the Citizens Forum, the chair will afford comments and questions as emailed to us in advance as followed. The chair will first identify the name and address of the public commentators, and then we'll read the emails, affording 3 minutes for any comments. Does everyone understand these ground rules? Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. At this time, I would like to turn the floor over to our business administrator, Mr. Dave Libby, for public presentation of the budget.
Mr. Chairman, just as a bit of introduction for Mr. Libby, just to try to put our FY21 budget presentation in context, Mr. Libby's presentation is consistent with the two previous budget hearings. We have been in direct contact at the state level and at the town level with budgetary concerns related to the pandemic. Certainly, this is a major issue that we will be dealing with as far as its effect on the budget. However, even as late as this afternoon, I connected with Town Manager, Mr. Montori, who has strongly encouraged us to ensure that we are putting forth the FY21 budget as has been developed. And certainly any conversations around any budget adjustments in regards to this pandemic will remain to be had in the future. It's certainly something we are concerned about, but it is also a bit different of an economic issue than, say, long-term recessions or other economic pieces. So we are certainly behind the scenes, preparing, considering, looking at all aspects of every budget to include the current FY20 budget that we're in, FY21 budget, and I'm sure this will be considerations in FY22 as well. But this budget will reflect certainly the mission of this school district and consistent with its budget development, which has taken place over the past 6 months. I say that in the context that we are very concerned, obviously, about the economic situation in regards to the pandemic. But we feel, and after guidance from the state and from local levels, that we move forward in this current budget process and not begin to address any overall impacts on any budget, whether it be this year's, next year's, or the year after, until more information is come at hand. But with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Libby.
Okay, good evening and welcome to our second budget hearing. We'll be handling remotely. I'm going to share my screen, which will show a slide presentation. Hope everyone is able to see that okay. We good?
That's good.
Okay. First thing we always start off with on our development of our budget, we present our district strategy. This is a statement that was developed in consultation with our administrative team and the school committee. The Tewksbury Public Schools community believes that our educational program will encompass a 21st century teaching and learning approach that promotes consistent growth among our students and staff to achieve academic, social, and emotional success for all students. Our theory of action is related to that statement. If the Tewksbury Public Schools prioritizes a growth mindset amongst all stakeholders while providing quality professional development and a professional culture grounded in collaboration, then all students will experience innovative, student-centered instruction, prioritizing positive outcomes. We follow that theory of action and mindset as we make all decisions regarding our budget during the current year and for future years. So the school department budget consists mainly of 4 major parts, 3 of which are managed by the schools: our salary, operating, and capital outlay. And 1 is managed and shared with the town. Those are our fixed costs, things like insurance, unemployment. We'll get into those details a little bit later in the presentation. Mainly when we talk about the school budget, though, we talk about salary, operating, and capital outlay. Those are the figures that are sort of solely in the control of the school department to establish those figures on how much we spend in those areas. We met with all of our building principals and department heads beginning in October, November to talk about our budget for FY21. These are some of the areas of focus that we found were consistently showing up in those meetings with those folks. From a personnel perspective, class size is something we always watch and assess. We want to make sure that the class sizes are equitable from school to school and grade level to grade level. Special education service delivery is another area of concern, whether the best method of delivering special education services is through an employee that we hire, or a consultant or contractor that we would bring in to provide those services for students. So that's always a decision that's sort of related to personnel. Our specialists at our K-4 elementary schools, art, music, phys ed, technology, and STEM, were restructured during FY20 to better serve students in those areas, in those grade levels. Seemed to be working well to the point we got to in school year where those folks were used in the best capacity for student learning. We also changed a little bit of how we provide clerical support at those schools. For the summer, at our K-4 schools, this year we piloted a part-time summer clerical program, which we never had before at the K-4 schools. So a lot of documents would sit for sometimes months at a time in those schools until we could get the folks back in the building to get documents moving along. Principals and secretaries are reporting that having that was a 3 or 4 hour commitment made by our clerical staff during the summer, Monday through Thursday, and they reported that it led to a much smoother startup in September when we welcomed our students back this past September. So that's a program we plan to continue into FY21. And this budget reflects the resources to do that. The last thing this budget reflects from a personnel perspective is an additional resource officer for our elementary schools. We have 2 currently that are based out of our high school and middle school, but provide support for all of our schools. We've been working with the Tewksbury PD for a long time on this initiative and trying to get a 3rd resource officer involved at the elementary level to provide some increased exposure for students with our police folks, as well as some additional social and emotional learning supports for students at all levels. In technology, device maintenance and replacement was a focus for our tech group. They have a very robust plan to replace devices based on their expected life for all devices in our classrooms. Also want to develop our monitoring systems so that we're more aware of problems before they affect student learning. If something goes blip in the middle of the night, we want to be able to get a technician on that before folks arrive at the building and find out that the internet's down. And it's such a vital learning tool for us these days. Being without it for any extended period of time really affects our operation. So we're looking at monitoring systems so that those things don't happen. And the last thing we're looking at a technology perspective would be printing solutions, working with less paper, trying to reduce the amount of paper we're using at all levels. We're all kind of getting a crash course in that these days with the remote learning and all the electronic communication that's going on, as opposed to paper during this crisis. In building improvements, we are trying to just upkeep our older buildings. Security is a big concern in the area of building improvements. Our building systems, we're always looking for ways to improve efficiencies and reduce waste and run our buildings at the most in the most economical way possible. All of our schools are interested now in STEM and maker spaces. We want to keep those spaces active and well stocked. So that's another area of building improvement that we focus on. And got an E-rate update that I'll touch on later in the presentation. So overall, in the areas of salary, operating, and capital outlay, the school department request is a 2.94% increase over the FY19 budget. We've had some minor changes since the initial request of January 10th, which is when we need to, by town bylaw, make our initial budget request to the town manager. Minor changes that resulted from salary reductions that we took for new retirees or resignations. And we had a minor operating increase to our regular transportation when we opened a bid. We had a estimate in, and the bid opening was slightly higher. And the other operating increase was for collaborative tuition. We had an estimated increase in there as well. And Valley Collaborative, when they published their FY21 rates, that figure increased a little bit. It's a $40,000 overall increase in operating and a reduction in salaries. So if you consider our fixed costs as well, which is what gets approved at the May town meeting, well, when the town meeting happens, it's a 2.03% increase for the school department in total. Our fixed costs have gone down a bit due to health insurance, some savings we're realizing with our new offerings to employees, and some interest payments that are on a graduating scale to decline over the course of the year. So that's a known decrease that we'll see as we move forward. So 70% of our budget is in salary. Our budget assumes level staffing for FY21 to start. We did see a decrease to our teaching staff at the Wynn School in FY20 that results in a slightly lower number in our teaching area this year. But the budget, the way the budget works, we see the budget decrease in FY21 for that decrease in staff there. This also accounts for all contractual step and longevity increases. But most of our money is spent in the salary area, 70% of the school budget. And as you can see, teachers represent 67% of that 70%. So most of our, great majority of our budget is tied up in salaries and teachers, and is spent in the classroom where we would like to spend the majority of our money. Our operating budget represents 28% of the total school budget. This is more of a evenly spread out in our different categories. Transportation and tuition are the highest percentage of the operating budget, and special education services represent a fairly significant amount of the operating budget as well. In our capital outlay budget, which is 2% of our budget, we recognize the need to maintain our buildings. And we also have been dedicating $250,000 of this annually for a textbook and related software upgrade, as we like to keep our textbooks and software up to the most up-to-date versions. And that program we plan to continue next year. So that left $600,000 for us to work on building, maintenance, and tech projects. And that $600 will be defined in a slide I'll get to in a minute. This is just a list of projects that we have sort of in the queue for consideration for FY21 through FY23, or as any funding might become available. Mostly in the areas of security and building maintenance, focusing on the older K-4 elementary schools that will be staying open after the new school project is completed. So Heathbrook and Dewing have a heavy focus on maintaining those buildings and providing a great learning environment for students in those buildings as we move forward. So the E-rate update we've met with consultants and we've had our folks look at which type of E-rate projects we should be considering for FY21. The E-rate program is a 50% reimbursement program. It was originally a 5-year program that was extended into year 6, which is our FY21 is year 6 of the E-rate program. So we had this remaining budget column is how much money we had earmarked at each building to spend. The projects that we've identified are in this actual cost column. We've gone out to bid on these projects. We have signed contracts with vendors who are E-rate approved vendors. So this is the total cost of the program of the project, and this is the Tewksbury Public Schools cost. It's 50% of the actual cost in most cases. We weren't able to identify E-rate programs that were reimbursable and would garner a good return on investment for the North Street and the Trahan schools. Those are the 2 schools that are slated to close upon the opening of our new elementary school building project. We really worked hard with our E-rate consultant and our E-rate vendor to try to come up with projects for those buildings. But the internet in those buildings is working really well right now, and we couldn't see the sense in investing money, even if we're getting 50% back on projects that we really didn't need at those buildings. So $60,000 will be what we target to spend on E-rate projects for FY21. The second priority for us was a first floor tile replacement at the Wynn School. We've had some bleeding through of moisture from underneath the surface. It requires the whole floor to be removed, sealed, and then retiled. We've also gone out to bid on that project, and we have a fixed price for that at $287,000. The Heathbrook windows are in really terrible shape. They're plexiglass, single pane, not at all energy efficient, not see-through. It's a project we really need to tackle as soon as we can. So we'll dedicate some resources to getting at least some of those classes in better shape from a window perspective. And this new project that just developed last week is a lighting retrofit at the Heathbrook School. It had been on sort of on the minds of the Green Committee, and it's officially moved into application phase with us, with the state through the Green Committee. They requested that we dedicate some resources to the project. As little as $5,000 was all we needed to sort of commit to the project. It's a $99,000 project with rebate incentives, leaving the final cost of the project at $75,000. And we're applying for a state grant to fund the $70,000. And according to folks on the Green Committee, we could actually qualify for the whole 75, not just the 70,000. So we may not even have to spend that $5,000, but the folks at the state like to see the communities commit some funds to those projects. So it's a great project, has about a little over $10,000 estimated savings in electricity. So the return on investment's great. It's something that's going to be really great for that school, brighten up the hallways, gymnasium areas, and classrooms, make it a much nicer environment for students in that building. So we should find out end of the summer or maybe in September if we're awarded that grant, and then we'd be able to move forward with that project through the course of next year. But it's an exciting venture that we're going down a path with the Green Committee on. So our internet speed, this is just a little side note for the committee. We invested a lot of money last year in the internet infrastructure in our buildings, and we're seeing results. Our internet price is the lowest in the area, and our speed is at the optimal level that we should be, according to the Education Superhighway website. So we, those folks in the tech department really knocked it out of the park with the projects they completed last year, and we're seeing great results in the classroom for our students. These are some of the capital projects that we've completed from FY17 to FY20. Ton of work in the area of technology, building security, and just overall maintenance of our buildings. With the folks in all these areas are just doing a terrific job at keeping these places in the best shape we can possibly get them. Onto grants and revolving accounts. We have 62 separate funds that we manage here in the business office. Many grants, revolving accounts. Some are funded through student fees and different tuition fees and things like that we collect, and many are grants as well. All have a specific purpose and must be used appropriately. The use of any of these funds must be related to the purpose of the fund, whether it's a grant or revolving type account driven by fees. So we're not allowed to take parking fees and buy textbooks. We have to spend the money in an associated cost with any of our activities. Grant funding. This is a chart of grant funding we had available to us in FY20, FY21 grant numbers. You generally come out in the springtime. We're not sure if how the COVID-19 pandemic will affect those dates and those grant funding amounts, or dates of those announcements. But typically, our grant funding remains pretty steady year to year. All the grants shown in the yellow here are basically entitlement grants that we get without really going after. We don't have to apply for them or anything like that. It's just an automatic. It's automatic that we receive funds for those grants from the state or the federal government each year. The big increase from FY19 to FY20 was down in the Title I area, which is based on free and reduced student lunch count. and we're generally right in the right near the number that produces a significant increase or potentially a decrease. It's around 20% that that number either jumps up quite a bit or goes down if you're under the target number. But this year we happen to jump up a little bit above it, and our Title I allocation went up about $200,000. So that's great for us to provide additional reading assistance for students with that money. So this is what our overall budget will look like at the May town meeting. This sort of gives more detail around our fixed costs, health insurance, retirement, unemployment, other insurance, and then down the bottom here, these are those principal and interest payments that are reflective of our investment in major projects in town over the past several years, including the new school project. Some of that borrowing has already occurred by the town on behalf of those projects. So next steps will be continued discussions, building principals, department heads, elected officials. As our needs or resources change, we'll be refining our budget and project lists and line items within our budget to fulfill the current needs in the district. This is an ongoing process. It's not something we finish and say, okay, we're done. It's constantly being evaluated. And this will go on until it's finalized at town meeting. So it results in a little bit of movement. It could result in a little bit of movement amongst categories in our budget, but we fully expect that we would be able to operate in the 68,672,000 that we are currently allocated with the town. And that is it for me. I will stop sharing my screen and see if we have any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Libby. Moving right along here. Mrs. Demos, do you have any questions regarding this evening's budget presentation?
I have no questions at this time.
Great, thank you. Mr. Wilson, do you have any questions for Mr. Libby regarding the budget?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Stadman?
No questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cutlass, do you have any questions?
No, all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I would just like to, I have no questions, Dave. I would like to thank you very much. I know this is all new to us, this remote virtual stuff. On that same note, I'd like to thank Mrs. Regan as well and Superintendent Malone, who've done a lot for us to get us up and trained and somewhat efficient, I hope, for when we go to the regular meeting here. So with that said, I would entertain a motion to close this evening's public budget hearing.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public budget hearing. How do you vote, Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. That's 5-0 unanimous vote to close the budget hearing. Okay, moving on. At this time, I would like to reconvene the regular school committee meeting now at 6:05 p.m. Unless Mr. Stadman has a flag right there next to him, I think we're going to forego the pledge. Any chance, Mr. Stadman? Okay. We're going to forego this evening's pledge. Having no recognitions, student report, or presentation other than we already had.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yes, I just, we did have scheduled some recognitions for March and April, and I certainly would want to maintain the fact that we have those individuals come in front of the committee when we can meet live. But there's a couple that are a little timely, so I was wondering if the committee would allow me just to mention a couple of them and allow them at a new time to come in.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of student recognitions that are very important. Again, from our great partners from Tewksbury VFW Post 8164, we've run the Patriot Pen contest and what makes America great contest, both out of VFW Post 8164. Big thank you to Miss Kathleen Anderson, grade 6 social studies teacher at the Ryan School, who facilitates and encourages our students to participate. And we had some 2 grade 6 recipients of the 2020 Patriot Pen contest. Chloe Mello, grade 6, won 3rd place at the district level, and grade 6 student Raymond Gutierrez won 2nd place at the district level for Patriot Pen, and we hope to have them in front of the committee soon. Also won the 2020 Voice of Democracy, and the topic was what makes America great. We had grade 11 student Mahir Bagal win 1st place at the district level and then advanced to the state level and took 4th place at the state level. 2 great jobs by our students in the academic realm. In athletics, we have 2 students from the winter sports that had significant awards given to them. The first is a familiar face to the committee, Michaela Page, grade 11 student from Tewksbury Memorial High School, is the 2020 All-State Champion in the 600-meter run in indoor track. Just a terrific feat for her. Again, she continues her lineage in athletics. She's also fantastic in the classroom, and she's just a great student to be around. We have a second one that's fairly significant, and Mr. Chairman, this one might ring a little true to you. Senior student Dylan Chandler is the Division II State Heavyweight Wrestling Champion. I can't tell you how difficult that sport is. It's a very much individual sport that is very difficult to get through those tournaments and raise to that level. And at the heavyweight class, that is typically the Cadillac matches of the wrestling meets. And Dylan achieving that level is just a significant accomplishment, and congratulations to him. And we hope to have both those student athletes in front of you as soon as we possibly can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. You stole my school committee matters of interest. Just the sidebar, a pretty good effort by our entire wrestling team. I believe they won the MVP this year. And Mr. Dylan Chandler not only won the states, but I think he's the first kid. I know he's the first kid since Dave Shuneman, who I believe was in '98, that also went on and won the New England. So a fantastic accomplishment for Dylan. I know he signed a letter of intent to go to school. So kudos to him. Pretty good football player, too. All around nice kid. And just like Michaela Page, someone certainly that Tewksbury can be proud of. So congratulations to Michaela and to Dylan. So. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Moving on to the Citizens Forum. As I noted in the rules of order here, citizens may submit comments through either myself, the chair, via email at my email address, or the superintendent of schools, Mr. Chris Malone. Email comments were accepted up till 4 p.m. tonight on April 15th. Comments submitted would have been read under the public participation portion of the agenda. I have not received up until 5:15 this evening any comments. I'd like to ask you, Superintendent Malone, if anyone has reached out to you via the Citizens Forum for comment.
I have not received any emails to that effect, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Seeing none, and we certainly would like to encourage, we know this is a new process. If you do have a question, it doesn't end here today. Please feel free to reach out to myself, to Superintendent Malone, any of my colleagues, or anyone that you feel comfortable with, quite honestly, with remote learning and all that's going on with this pandemic and, the real health crisis that we're facing. It'd be a shame not to reach out if you have a question. So we certainly encourage you to do that anytime. So, okay, moving along, I would like to turn the floor over to Mrs. Demos for our approval of the February 12th minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of February 12th, 2020.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the February 12th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. That's a 5-0 unanimous vote to approve the minutes. Thank you, Mrs. Demos. I'd also like to ask you to submit the payroll, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the school department payroll for the period ending February 20th, 2020 to be approved and certified in the amounts and categories as shown for a total amount of $1,376,686.58.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the payroll ending February 20, 2020. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. I'd like to move along to the March payroll, please.
I move the school department payroll for the period ending April 2nd, 2020 to be approved and certified in the amounts and categories as shown for a total amount of $1,318,409.71.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the payroll ending April 2nd, 2020. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mr. Stadman?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. I'd like to ask you to approve the payroll ending March 5th, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the school department payroll for the period ending March 5th, 2020 to be approved and certified in the amounts and categories as shown for a total amount of $1,423,701.85.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the payroll ending March 5th. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. And finally, the payroll ending March 19th, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the school department payroll for the period ending March 19th, 2020 to be approved and certified in the amounts and categories as shown for a total amount of $1,380,892.06.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the payroll ending March 19th, 2020. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much, Mrs. Demos.
Thank you.
Like to move on to our next agenda item, the superintendent and staff reports. I'd like to turn it over to who has been very busy, Superintendent, Mr. Chris Malone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And obviously, this is a very unusual situation for the school district. Our main concern has been with the students and families of the district, one from a health perspective and from a social emotional perspective, and then finally from an educational perspective. So certainly this is ever-changing times, and this is our first pandemic to work through, so we're doing our best with it. I would certainly like to start out by thanking the committee for your support, your understanding around this. Your input and feedback has been very helpful to me and the entire leadership team. specifically to our chair, Mr. Sullivan. I'm not sure when you signed up for school committee, you knew you were going to be talking to the superintendent 3 times a day, 7 days a week. But I appreciate your help, your counsel, and your support very much. We're going to be talking a little bit tonight. Ms. Regan's going to roll out to you our remote learning plan. I have to really give the preponderance of that credit to Ms. Regan, Mr. Pelletier, the directors and the principals who have done an outstanding job tirelessly from day one and watch this roll out from a snow day to an enrichment to a deeper learning to whatever will be next on May 4th. And I've watched these individuals dedicate multiple hours a day, more so than they ever would if they were physically at work in many cases, all to support our students, to help our staff implement and to do these pieces. So I think with Mr. Libby's help in dealing with vendors and assuring that all our individuals are taken care of with pay, with health benefits, with all these aspects. I'm just very proud of the leadership team in how they've operated. How we do on this remote learning really comes down to our teachers and our professional staff, and they have just been doing an outstanding job. They're working very hard in uncertain conditions, and just remember that all of our teachers and staff members are at home with family members and have other aspects that challenge them. And while that's going on, they're still providing high quality educational opportunities for students and support for students and families. And we couldn't be prouder of our staff in how they're managing all of that. And you'll hear a little bit more about what that looks like in detail from Ms. Regan. In addition, we have elements such as our community services preschool. Even though we're not taking in tuitions or have students directly enrolled day to day, they're still providing our preschool students with educational opportunities and support and some online aspects to help parents and students in this tough time. I would really like to talk about some of the response of our staff during this health crisis that we're very proud of. And I would start, first of all, with our custodial staff and maintenance staff who responded to this health emergency immediately, took on all aspects of enhanced cleaning of all buildings, bringing in contracted services to add an additional layer. They have been at these buildings since day one, and they are still there today, working to keep our buildings clean, to keep our buildings safe, anticipating that we're going to be returning. And I know that when our staff and students return to these buildings, they're going to be the safest buildings they possibly can be. And we're just very proud of our custodial staff. Our food service workers are working diligently, continually providing meals for community members every day out of the North Street School between 11:30 and 12:30, a grab-and-go lunch program led by Deb Mugford and her entire food service staff. These individuals are working very hard under sometimes trying conditions, but it is the definition of perseverance when you watch families drive through for the grab-and-go lunch at the North Street School. It is not about the food, it's about the interaction that Deb Mugford's staff provides with families as they come through, which is a smiling face, an encouragement, hello, a familiar face. They're just so friendly, so supportive to our families in town. I can't say enough about the food services and the work they've done. Our technology staff, our unsung heroes. They very rarely seek recognition, but they have been working diligently to provide over 250 devices to students in a drive-through method that was medically safe and secure for both parents who are picking up devices and our technology staff. And they worked up a sign up and delivery system that was done totally electronically. Nothing was required to be written down or handed off or anything of that nature. And they worked very hard during very trying times to make sure devices went out to students and to staff who needed them. And they continue to monitor any additional needs of student and staff and are available for repair and support in people's homes, which is just outstanding. Our school nurses are working diligently hand in hand with the town Board of Health. They are providing services for the town to support the medical staff at Town Hall in reaching out to COVID-19 potential and confirmed cases, to check in with families, to notify families of services available to them, and to work hand in hand with the town. We're so proud of our nurses for taking that on. Ms. Kelly Constantino, our lead nurse, has been leading this charge, has been really helpful in looking at all of our supplies that we have in the school district, to include masks, to include gloves. And she helped us organize gathering all those materials together and distributing those back to the town for our emergency services worker, both police and fire. So we have taken all those supplies that we have and repurposed them to the town for their needs, to also include goggles. We assembled all of our shop goggles available, all of our elements, and redistributed them to the Tewksbury Public Police for their safety. We have 2 3D printers that were donated to us in partnership with our robotics club, that actually the same person that helped donate them came back and asked, can we lend these out to Mass General Hospital to help them make personal protective gear? At which time we immediately responded to that, got the 2 3D printers, and assembled all of our filament supplies to deliver and donate to them at MGH. We have 2 remaining 3D printers that Mr. Libby and Mr. Stamp have worked hard to reorder filament supplies. And once we have that on, we have been working with the town EMS, and we will help and produce masks and or face shields for them as well once we receive those filament supplies. But again, I think these are the important stories about Tewksbury Public Schools' response to this pandemic. We've donated gloves en masse to Tewksbury State Hospital. We've donated 4 hospital beds from our high school nursing program to Tewksbury State Hospital. So we will continue to work and help out in any way we can in the town. But this is also kind of our priorities right now with the school district, to support the town where we can to help us get through this pandemic. All of our staff are on board with that. We are really working hard to make sure if there's anything else we can do or anything else we can supply or help out with, we want to do. So there's kind of 2 avenues that are going on with the school department as far as our response to this pandemic. One, again, you'll hear a little bit more about remote learning, which is our most obvious approach and our most student-centered approach. And then there's another piece going on that we really need to come together as a community and support each other. And this is a response to a health emergency, and we want to make sure we're doing our part. And just to look at some other further impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, some actions we're taking. Mr. Libby is in the process of working with families, particularly at the high school level, in refunding all spring sports athletic fees. That is not to mean that means we won't be having spring sports. That has not been determined yet. If we do, they will be done at no user fee charge. We think it's important at this time that we know it won't be a normal season if it does occur, so we wanted to make sure to get those fees back to families, and that is in the process. Recent announcements from the state level. MCAS testing for the spring of 2020 has been canceled at all grade levels, so there will be no administration of MCAS this year. There are some further decisions that need to be made between the commissioner and the Board of Education regarding high school competency, about all other high school students, whether it's ninth graders who did not take the biology exam, will they be exempt from that, or will they need to take it next year? Grade 10 students, what will they be taking in grade 11, if anything? And also a follow-up with any current seniors who still have not passed MCAS. So those are some pieces that still remain a bit unanswered, but the administration of MCAS, as we know it, will not take place this year. The Student Opportunity Act plan that was originally designed to be due to the state level on April 1st has now been postponed to, at a minimum, May 15th. That requires a school committee vote to approve that plan. We've talked about it a couple of times in previous meetings. That is federal Chapter 70 money that comes in relation to free and reduced lunch, economically disadvantaged numbers from the state. That the actual money is an actual less increase of Chapter 70 than we had last year. So the plan does not reflect necessarily an increase in money, but it is a requirement of the legislation to have an SOA plan in place. It's a short one-page form. If that date maintains itself at May 15th, we will have it in front of you in the next school committee meeting to vote on. And again, we continue to examine the impact on our school budget in operations. There are some, because we are not in session, certainly there are some costs that we are actually saving on as a result of that. We hope that there will be legislation put forth at the state level that may allow us to roll over additional monies from FY20 into FY21 to offset any pieces that may be coming as a result of the pandemic. But likely, some of our operating costs will be lower. So we hope to be able to use that effectively, either between us or the town. We keep in constant contact with the town manager. He's certainly very attuned of what our needs are and been very helpful in developing our budget. And we feel like with that relationship, we feel very confident moving through the next few months. I think likely one of the first aspects of the budget we'll see maybe is delays in state approval of state budgets, which then creates delays down at the town level, but not so much a reduction anticipation as of just yet. Some good news that sometimes can, when we have a major event like this, can get lost in the pieces. We were so very proud of our special education department and our civil rights under Ms. Regan and special education under Mr. Pelletier, who went through the tiered focus monitoring process with an on-site visit in early February. In my career, I've been through several of these. These are very comprehensive, intricate looks into school district operations to make sure they're in compliance with special education laws and regulations and federal civil rights laws and regulations. Typically, a written report on this matter, the smallest one I've ever seen before was approximately 40 pages. It can go upwards of 100 pages. We have our results, and it is 7 pages long. And the significant portion of this is that the overall rating of every characteristic, which is approximately 30 different characteristics, are all fully implemented, which means there were 0 discrepancies found across the board. I've been in education 26 years. I've never heard of that. So a significant tip of the cap to Mr. Pelletier in the special education department, a significant tip of the cap to Ms. Regan in her attention to detail on the civil rights regulations. That's a terrific report. Usually these reports can require visits back, can require corrective action, can require a level of paperwork just to maintain or get a rating that is significant. And this requires us with no action whatsoever. So it's something we're just very, very proud of and great work. In addition, we were notified by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that the Trahan Elementary School is one of the winners of the Massachusetts School Breakfast Challenge. They had almost 32% of their students participate in regular breakfast. That's a great piece to have. We've had other schools, the Ryan School and other schools, win that designation before, but that's a tip to our food services department for providing great breakfast. It's a great tip of cap to Mr. Harding and the Trahan staff for encouraging students, and thank you to the Trahan PAC for helping us achieve that as well. And just also a reminder, some of these things that traditionally come around this year, I know the Ginsburg Award is one element. We'll postpone that. I will speak out to Mr. Ginsburg and see how he would like to proceed. We have some other awards to consider around that nature that typically happen in this time of the year. So we will certainly address that. Probably virtually may not be the best way to bring that to the level that we really like to see those things happen with the contributions of community members and have them present and do those pieces. So we will consider other options as far as that goes, but it will be postponed for right now. With that, I will hand it over to Ms. Regan.
Thank you, Superintendent. Before, Brenda, can you hear me? Hello?
Gotcha. There I am.
I just want to ask if my colleagues have any questions or comments. I know that was a lot by Chris, so before we get to you, I'd just like to start with Mr. Wilson. Do you have any questions regarding that?
I'll just make a quick comment. Just so many good things going on, and the education piece is certainly paramount. It's important. But when you talk about the printers donated to the MGH and what Mr. Libby intends to do by, printing masks with the, printers when we're able to do that, what food services has been accomplishing, all the donated supplies and time from all the different people. I just think we're focused on the right things. Right now is the time to care for one another and just take care of the important stuff, which is each other. And while the education piece is very important, making sure that we're caring for one another in our community and in the greater community of Massachusetts is just tremendous. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you to your team. So pleased with all the great things that are going on.
Great. Well said, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Stadman, do you have any questions or comments, sir?
No, just to piggyback on what Mr. Wilson was saying, I think it's a great reuse and just to look inside, see what technologies we have inside of the schools. Obviously, we have the 3D printers, like Scott was saying, that have them available, get them up and going, and being able to give back to the community and be able to show that we as a community can allow that to give out resources and just have them be there and have them be printing and going forward. So I appreciate the effort by everybody, and hopefully everyone's staying safe at the same time. And like I said, it's all good news, and hopefully we know we're going to make this out on the other side. So
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stadman. Mr. Cutlass, anything to add?
No, Mr. Chairman, just a great report by Mr. Malone. Excellent report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cutlass. Mrs. Demos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to, echo the sentiments that came before me, that I'm so pleased to hear everything that we're doing as part of a community outreach. I think that these are the times when you just truly do feel the pride in your community, and, you're kind of proud to be a resident of Tewksbury at this point. But with that said, thank you for all your time and your efforts, and for all that you're doing for the kids and the families of Tewksbury.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Demos. I'm going to echo the same. Obviously, that's great news with the tiered focus monitoring. Certainly look forward to reading that report. It's great to know that everything that we're doing is in compliance. Little things, I think everyone's struggling at some point. Something as simple as the sports fees might not seem like a significant thing, but I think sending that money back to the residents, that's fantastic. Hopefully, I'm hopeful. I know I seem to be, in the small minority of that. I'm hopeful we're going to get back to school. I really think we're going to. I hope we do. I hope we can get kids back out there playing all kinds of sports. And if that happens, and they do it at no cost because of what's going on, like Mr. Wilson said, it's the right thing to do to take care of each other. So, and my only other comment is, I think none of this happens without the relationships from all of my colleagues, superintendent, yourself, Brenda and David, the town manager, the selectmen. I think Tewksbury is in a really good place where, as focused as we are all the time on education, I think it's great that when the town needs something, that certainly the schools here to step up and do everything that they can on a more global aspect of things, as Mr. Wilson said, and be good neighbors and take care of each other. So it's fantastic that we've built that relationship. Hopefully that can continue, because obviously it's only going to make our community stronger and our schools stronger. So with that, thank you, Mr. Malone. I would like to now turn it over to Mrs. Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. First, let me just say it's great to see all of you here, healthy and well. Glad to hear your families are doing the same, and glad that we're here as well. It's hard to believe, but it's been a month since we've met. Actually, more than a month. It's been since March 12th that school was in session, and it was since February 12th that we met. When I started to really review all the things that have happened in the district from that time period, and what I should report on, and what was really relevant, because it really does feel like a lifetime ago, I was really immediately brought back to that week right before school closed in March, and the weeks just before that, when this health crisis forced the shutdown of all of the state schools. I was excited to remember and remind myself, and hopefully you'll feel the same, of all the wonderful momentum that was occurring within our PLC teams and our curriculum mapping teams. Why am I talking about that? I hope you'll see the theme when I get through this report. Both the high school and Ryan Wynn teams had some really valuable in-service time one-on-one with our UBD consultant, Renee Carter, and they were really well directed to continue with these major district goals of content, PLC leadership, and curriculum mapping. Then scheduled on that Friday, March 13th, and into the next 2 weeks, our elementary staff was looking forward to some pivotal in-service days with the consultant for that one-on-one feedback as well. Unfortunately, we all know, as a result of the school shutdown, we've had to put that amazing momentum and PD initiative and district goal work behind us for now, or so we thought. Because what really has occurred since that time, I would say, is an unintended result of the training that they had already been receiving. It's what we're now seeing as a natural transfer, really, of the growth of those learned leadership skills and that common content planning skills that they had been using in that district goal and in the initiative. What we're seeing is really the transfer of those skills in our virtual planning. So as a reminder, because a lot has happened since then, the first phase, the original phase during school closure period, which was intended to only go to March 16th through April 6th, was the DESE advised enrichment phase. It feels like, again, a lifetime ago, but that was the first phase of our statewide school closure. We developed an amazing 2-week enrichment plan for families in just 4 days. Those 2 district newsletters are included in your consent agenda as a reminder. They're rich with links and activities that many families participated in. Each newsletter, in fact, got approximately over 5,000 visitors on each newsletter and tens of thousands of views. They were in large part developed by our district admin team, remember, in 4 days with guidance from their PLC leaders and those content leaders that I just talked about. Again, please imagine a world where remote virtual collaboration was new to almost everyone. Tewksbury is without multiple levels of those curriculum directors that other towns have relied on in this work. And our principals and those lead teachers pivoted very fast and planned that district enrichment initiative. All while at the same time, many teachers didn't have devices at home. They certainly didn't have the materials they were used to having in the classroom. Many students didn't have devices at home. We've praised that IT team already through the superintendent's report. And families, including our own staff's families, were in need of supports while also trying to do this work at home. Our IT team jumped into gear. Hundreds of devices were dismantled, cleaned, and got ready for students and teachers to borrow. While we, I believe, truly moved a mountain, our teachers, students, and families certainly saw quickly, though, that just by getting a device in the home was not going to replace learning. And it was not as simple as just having a computer in front of them. So yet we turned around a very valuable and relevant enrichment plan, all with our eye on a new remote learning plan to be developed concurrently as we were at the same time hearing the news of the extended school closure now until May 4th. So I'd be lying to you if I said this was easy, because of course it wasn't. It still is not easy. It's really been a whirlwind and a lot of work by many. And like Chris said, I am just so proud of the work our admin team has done together with and in collaboration with these teacher leaders, those people who have been getting that PD to lead content teams and PLC teams all throughout the school year. So even though, we have to think about how those big district goals will bring that back someday and how we might reschedule and pick back up with the PD and those projects, especially the PLC collaboration and the curriculum mapping. I wanted you to know that I truly believe that PD training we were knee deep in right before schools closed truly was the preparation that we were able to draw upon when this real push came to shove in creating our new learning and support system for both students and families. Later in the agenda, I think when you see the remote learning plan, you're going to see the results of that leadership and collaboration and all the grade level learning and family supports. I hope you'll agree with me that work that we did prior to March 13th is really paying off right now. And finally, it's been intimated already. Our hope is when we do go back to normal, and we all know we will someday, this won't be lost time, but some real life PD and some real life collaboration that make us all better equipped to pick back up with those initiatives. That includes my update for tonight.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Regan. I'd like to ask my colleagues if they have any questions or comments. I'll start with Mr. Wilson, please.
Yeah, no, just a thank you to Brenda, for your efforts, not only in getting us up to speed on Google Hangouts, but all the work you've been doing behind the scenes. Again, just it's tremendous to hear how many good things are going on in our district, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Stadman?
Oh, there we go. Off the mute. No, I concur with Mr. Wilson. I appreciate the quick tutorial on the Googles, and yes, to you and the rest of the staff as well. And hopefully, as you said, the momentum will, once we get back to the new normal, continue back with the momentum, get the ball rolling again in the right direction, as you say, and continue back with the momentum.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stadman. Mr. Cutlass, anything to add?
I know, just concur with Mr. Wilson as well, and Brenda is doing an excellent job, working very hard, as we know. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Cutlass. Mrs. Demos?
Hi, thank you. I just want to really kind of point out the depth of resources and the level of effort and expertise that were in all of those newsletters and resources that were put out by Brenda and the team. It was incredible. I myself was sharing them with colleagues in a different district, saying we need to learn from this. I think they were stellar. I think that I actually printed out one of the Google shortcut pages for myself and have it on my desk. So I was learning things as I was looking through. So I can understand and appreciate how much time went into that. But the level of detail that was in there, it was just incredible, and absolutely kudos to you and your team. And thank you for taking the time and laying it all out there and thinking of everything that could possibly have been needed in a family. You sort of took them from those of us that really needed to start at the bottom with the Google and work our way up. And then you were ready for the other ones that had a little more experience. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Demos. I'd also like to jump on the bandwagon and thank Mrs. Regan. I know it's been a few months since we were at the last meeting, but she filled in, I thought, very well for you, Mr. Malone, in your absence when you were out at superintendent school. So it's certainly you've picked up a share of the workload since then. You continue to do so with all that's going on within the school and without. So certainly kudos for you. My only one other question I have, we have the consent agenda tonight, Mrs. Regan. I don't know if you wouldn't mind just quickly explaining the two Merrimack College things. It looks like everything else is personnel items and retirements. Seeing how we're not live and no one has that information, maybe it might be good if just a very quick, brief update for my colleagues and for the people that are going to watch this, if you don't mind, please.
Sure. Often when our teachers or our other staff members, principals participate in assisting new teachers or practicums, and I think Ms. Demos has probably done this once or twice in her career as well. What we then receive are invites from the college for coursework that our staff may participate in for free.
Great. All right. Does anyone, seeing how we're on the consent agenda, does anyone have any questions or comments regarding tonight's consent agenda?
No.
And as I read earlier, for those that are eventually going to watch this material is available. If anyone would like to get it, they can email Ms. Gail Johnson. That's G Johnson at tewksbury.k12.ma.us. So seeing no questions, and thank you for the explanation, Mrs. Regan. Do I have a motion regarding the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept tonight's consent agenda as proposed in tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Great. I have a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent agenda. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much, Mrs. Regan. Moving on to the committee reports. The elementary school building committee, I'd like to turn it over now to Mr. Cutlass, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The elementary school building committee, we're meeting remotely as well. We met last week for the first time. I think it went pretty well. We submitted 90% design documents to the MSBA for their review and approval. We're also continuing to go before the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission to get the necessary permits to move forward with the project. Consigli, our contractor, they're submitting early bid packages for steel and site work and so forth, and that's going pretty well with some of the subcontractors. And it's just still a work in progress. A little slowed down, but they're still meeting. They met with the planning board and the conservation, and they're on the agendas for May as well. And hopefully we'll get the permits at that time and they can start to do as much work as possible. But we're moving forward, and that's my report.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Cutlass. Thank God construction is still essential at this time. So
Yes,
hopefully that won't hold us up in the project.
we hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the Tewksbury Education Foundation, Mrs. Demos.
I have no updates at this time.
Thank you. The Tewksbury CPAC, like everyone else, they're stuck with the restrictions, so they haven't met. We have met, myself and Mr. Malone and Mr. Pelletier and Mrs. Regan and several people from the district. We've met with the CPAC leadership the last 3 Wednesdays, trying to help and assist and navigate the remote learning. So we certainly we appreciate their input. Certainly it's insightful. They've been able to provide us, I think, with a lot of helpful information that's allowed us to make decisions that are in the best interest for our students. So as far as the wellness advisory update, I'd like to turn to Mr. Stadman.
I have no update at this time. When we were going to meet, obviously we got hit with a small pandemic here, so we've had to push out our meeting to the next available time.
No problem. So there's no wellness stuff going on.
No, there's no wellness. We are all keeping well, if you will, and we'll just leave it at that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stadman. Just a little joke. Sorry. All right. I'd like to go on to the policy changes, proposals, and adoptions and turn it over to Mrs. Demos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight we have a few policy changes to rescind and to recommend. So we'll start with the policies to rescind. The Massachusetts Association of School Committees found the following policies to be redundant or unnecessary on the first reading: the IHA, Basic Instruction Program; IHBGE, Homeschooling; JLA, Student Insurance Program; JLD, Guidance Program; JP, Student Gifts and Solicitations. The following policies are recommended for revisions to Tewksbury Public Schools policy or by adoption of the Massachusetts Association of School Committee policy, the first reading on file. JB, Equal Educational Opportunities; JBB, Educational Equity; JFABD, Homeless Students, Enrollment Rights and Services; JFABE, Educational Opportunities for Military Children; JFABF, Educational Opportunities for Children in Foster Care. And all of this information is located within the agenda and the paperwork for tonight's meeting and is available for the public upon request.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Demos. I would also like to add that this is just a reading. Residents, constituents are certainly welcome to please pull these policies, look at them. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, they're exactly that. We're revisions. They are revisions. So if you have any comments or questions, you can email myself. You can email any one of my colleagues or the superintendent. We'd certainly like to get your input on that. So thanks again, Mrs. Demos. I would like to now move on to old business for the 2020 Tewksbury School Committee meeting schedule. And I'd like to turn that over to Mrs. Regan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What you have in front of you are some edits for the August 2020 school committee meeting and our retreat, as well as for the December 2020. I can just give you a little rationale. The August meeting, we wanted to put another week forward because this school year will start so late in the year with Labor Day being late. This gives, a common window of time for our principals to not only articulate to you their school improvement plans, but also to have that meeting a little bit later in August where we start school, as I said, later in September than normal. The December meeting is we're asking you to push to December 9th, Traditionally, you've seen that CASE conference and other statewide meetings are happening that last week of November, first week of December, and we bumped into that twice now in a row. So we thought we should just be a little forward thinking, move the date now.
Okay, great. I'd like to ask my colleagues if they have any issues, questions, comments, or concerns. And I'd like to start with Mr. Stadman because he's already mic off.
No questions, comments, or concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Stadman. Mr. Wilson?
No questions, comments, or concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Cutlass?
All set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mrs. Demos?
All set, thank you.
Great. I don't have any questions either. I assume you're looking for an official vote for this tonight, Mrs. Regan?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the committee at this time?
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal from Mrs. Regan as put forth.
To amend the
Oh, sorry. To,
2020 school committee dates.
to amend the two 2020 school committee dates.
I'll second.
Second.
And I have a motion and a second to approve Mrs. Regan's 2020 meeting schedule as has been amended this evening on April 15th. This requires a roll call vote. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. That's a unanimous vote. Those are now moved and approved dates, Mrs. Regan.
Thank you very much.
Under new business, I do have something that we realized here moving forward with the corona, obviously, and the impact of that, and the election being moved as well as town meeting being moved. It looks like our next scheduled meeting is May 13th, 2020. That's 3 days prior to the town election. I just wanted to have some discussion with my colleagues to see if that makes sense to move it a week and have it May 16th so the new board can be set and reorg and make the final approval on the budget on that May 16th date with the people that are going to be sitting for the next 3 years. And all that will be in place for June. I think the town meeting right now is scheduled for June 1st and June 3rd. So those were just my thoughts. I'd like to open it up for discussion. I'd like to start with Mr. Wilson, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that makes sense on both accounts. One, to get, obviously, to have the school committee situated with the members that will be going forward, and then also to vote on the budget prior to the prior to town meeting.
Okay. Mr. Stadman?
I agree with Scott, Mr. Wilson.
Okay. I see Mr. Malone has his hand raised. Before I go to you, Mr. Cutlass, Mr. Malone, do you have something to answer?
Mr. Chair, one of the little uncertainties is the SOA plan approval, which right now, and again, it will be no sooner than May 15th required to submit. It likely could be later than that. That does require a school committee vote. I think we could achieve that separately from a meeting if we had to. I think you've all heard enough about it and could look at it. And my sense would be that would not be a primary concern on a meeting date or not, as long as we could ensure that we got a school committee vote on the SOA plan, which is required by the legislation.
Okay. Mrs. Reagan, did you have anything to add?
It was the same topic, actually. Thank you.
I'd just like to add, obviously, I know that I would think, I don't want to speak for everyone. I'm certainly willing to do that if it comes to that. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Cutlass here and then Mrs. Demos, and we can consider the discussion. But certainly, thank you for that information, Mr. Malone. Mr. Cutlass?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't hear, you froze up on my screen. You want to change the 13th to the 16th? Is that it?
To the 16th, yes. No, to the 20th. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I The 16th is the annual town election.
so I'm good with the 20th, I think is good.
Yeah, the 20th would be, the meeting and the reorg, and then the new board would be set, reorged and sitting for the June town meeting.
Yep, that's fine with me, Mr. Chairman. That sounds like a good idea.
Okay. Mrs. Demos?
I have no problem with the 20th either. I just want to just be cognizant of that date for the SOA plan, whether we had to have a special school committee meeting that met briefly to approve it in order to have that date met. But I am free on the 20th and open for that as well.
Superintendent, with the laxed restrictions here, is that something that we could do via email or even remotely?
I think we could accomplish it multiple ways. We can check on that. And again, I even the May 15th date, I would put a 50% chance at least that may be pushed out even further than May 15th.
Okay.
So I'm sure there's a way we could accomplish it without having to change any of the committee's thinking on when they want to meet.
Okay. I'm just going to go back to Mr. Wilson to make sure that doesn't change anything in your mind, Mr. Wilson?
It does not.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mr. Stadman?
No.
Okay, so what is the pleasure of the committee at this time then?
I'd like to make a motion that we move the currently scheduled meeting from May 13th to May 20th. Yeah, I'll stop there.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to move the regularly scheduled May 13th meeting to May 20th, 2020. Mr. Cutlass, we're going to take a roll call vote. How do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much. Can we just make sure that Mrs. Johnson posts that as soon as we can, Mr. Malone, both on our website and within the town, just so everyone's aware of that change, please?
Will do, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you very much. And while I have you on the mic, maybe we could discuss the last day of school. And I think you have a matter of interest for us regarding April vacation.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Typically at this time of the year, which is a very typical thing for us to do in April, we would consider the past school calendar in relation to snow days and make a determination of when the last day of school was. So that is actually a very typical April school committee task. What's also, what complicates this is obviously the pandemic and the remote learning in all aspects of this. One aspect for the school committee to consider as part of this decision of determining when the last day of school is would be to consider April vacation, which is next week. There have been currently of the 27 districts that have answered a survey within the Merrimack Valley, about 2/3 of them have worked through their school committees and voted to, quote, work through April vacation. What that means would be to continue the remote learning through April vacation. Monday of April vacation is a state holiday. So the other 4 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, they have voted to continue their remote learning at that time. The change that would make for the last day is that it would take 4 days off the last day. It would replace 4 days of remote learning during April vacation and move the last day 4 days sooner. Currently, our last day is June 19th. That is our 185th day, which is 180 school days plus 5 snow days. We had 3 actual snow days, and then due to the commissioner's alter of the regulation, the first 2 days of the pandemic no school counted as snow days as well, to give us the total of 185. This, if we determined that the school committee wanted to move towards continuing the remote learning through April vacation, that would bring the last day of school to June 15th. So it'd be a 4-day difference. Obviously, there's some pluses and minuses to all of this. You know, some of the positives in making a move to continue remote learning through April vacation would continue the momentum that we've gained in remote learning. We think also that because there's continues with stay-at-home order, it will not interfere with family vacations. In fact, if families continue to stay at home, it may be more productive for them to engage continually in remote learning than be on vacation without other responsibilities. We did do a parent survey out, a voluntary parent survey out. Approximately 85% of the parents favored to continue the remote learning through April vacation and have 4 less days at the end of the school year. We have worked and talked with our unions within the district. The unions would be supportive of moving that date as well. In other words, they would be in support of continue to work through April vacation on remote learning for 4 days in exchange for school ending 4 days earlier on June 15th. The only drawback would be if we return to school, particularly on May 4th. Currently, what we're hearing from the commissioner yesterday is that they anticipate the governor making a decision early next week as regards to what schooling will be after May 4th, whether we return right after May 4th, whether we set another date further on down the line of remote learning, or whether the governor makes a decision to actually cancel school for the remainder of the school year and continue on with remote learning. We're not sure which one of those decisions would be made. And to echo the chairman's sentiments, we would certainly prefer any chance of students to return to school, to return to true education and interaction with their teachers, to return to develop their peer relationships, to return and receive the social emotional support they can receive at school, and also to allow families to return to some semblance of a regular schedule and regular meeting. We don't know what the chances of that are. So if we did work through and we did return to school, that might potentially be 4 less days we might have of true interaction with students in school. So that's one consideration on that side. But again, you know, some of the data that we do have is that approximately 2/3 of the school districts in the Merrimack Valley are choosing to work through April vacation. Parents at about an 85% rate have expressed in favor of working through April vacation. The union workforces have been in support of moving to working through April vacation. So that's just some of the information and the data for the committee to consider. So it's kind of a 2-tiered decision here. It really is a decision on what is the last day of school, but what would be inclusive of that, if that last day would be June 15th, would be a separate school committee vote to make a determination to continue remote learning through the 4 days of April vacation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Malone. I'd like to open it up now to my colleagues for discussion. I'll start with Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, Chris raised all the good points in discussion with parents and some Facebook chats. I've heard a lot of different opinions. I would say the things that sort of stuck out to me are the things that jump out as weighing strongest in my opinion or my decision would be, I think it's important to keep the momentum of the learning right now. I think that, parents are feeling like, wow, they're kind of back to it and we're making some progress. So I think that's important to keep. I also think, if they were coming back into the building, then I would be probably more inclined to want to see the students in the building longer. But where I have, Scott Wilson's own gut is just saying, wow, it's going to be tough to get all these students back into a building. It seems to me shortening or ending the school year on June 15th makes more sense. And then, the final thing is, the parent poll sort of leaned one way versus the other. And it certainly sounds like parents' desire is to have the kids continue. So that's just where my head's at in terms of this issue.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Stadman?
I concur with Mr. Wilson. My thing is that, we've got a great, again, the momentum going forward with the online learning. And, I think I shared with listening to me coming home every day and listening to, my two kids coming home and listening to their quote unquote struggles with either history or math or English or one of their favorite teachers giving them assignments. And I want to keep that going, keep that forward momentum going. And, it not to go against the, be it, but it's, we're keeping that momentum going. And at the same time, it's, we're here, we're going forward. And, it's not to be a Debbie Downer, but, it's an April vacation. It's not, typically it's people going out and other things, but, we don't have the opportunity to go out where you typically take a break and things like that. So I think we embrace this opportunity, keep it going forward. And like everyone says, just keep everything going forward.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stadman. Mr. Cutlass?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with what everyone said. I think it makes the most sense. Thank you.
Great. And Mrs. Demo?
Hi, I'm definitely in favor of working through April vacation and having the last day be June 15th. I just would hate to see any of the kiddos take any steps backwards after getting themselves in a routine and some sort of a sense of normalcy and a schedule down. So my vote would be that we should be looking to have June 15th as the last day and work those 4 days after Patriots Day for April vacation.
Okay, great. My only comments is first to the superintendent, thanks for getting us all the information. I think, as Mr. Wilson alluded to, I think everyone talks to a lot of people. It's certainly great to engage all our stakeholders. Certainly, it weighs heavily on me, our teachers who really, in my opinion, have been doing fantastic things, going above and beyond. Certainly getting their advice, getting input from residents. Certainly it seems to make it a lot easier decision for us where we're not just sitting in a vacuum deciding what we individually think. So thank you for getting all that information. I thank my colleagues for going out there and talking to friends and people like I know you have and really getting the pulse of the community. And it sounds like this is the direction that we're headed. So at this time, would someone like to make a motion regarding why don't we take it as this? Why don't we take a motion regarding the April vacation first?
I'll make a motion. We continue the remote learning through April vacation with the exclusion of Patriots Day.
Yep.
I'll second that, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a motion and a second to continue remote learning with the exception of Monday, Patriots Day, which is April, what do we got here? April 20th. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. That's a unanimous vote. 5-0. We will be officially canceling the scheduled contracted vacation for April, and we will be doing remote learning for our students on Tuesday through Friday, just for clarity. And now I'd entertain a motion. Who wants to be the hero to set the last day of school?
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we approve June 15th as the final, last day of school for Tewksbury Public Schools in the year 2020.
I'll second that.
Excellent. I have a motion and a second to approve June 15th, 2020 as the last day of school for Tewksbury Public Schools. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. It's a unanimous vote. 5-0. The last day of school will now be June 15th, 2020. And I'd like to now turn it over to Mrs. Regan for the remote learning plan website.
Mr. Chair, I think we have one other vote before we do that, and that's the
Oh, yeah.
vote regarding
Choice,
school
thank you.
choice.
Okay, maybe you could give us a brief update regarding the school choice. Thank you for the reminder.
Mr. Chair, yeah, certainly every year we vote, there's a requirement for school committees to vote on the school choice. Typically, we look at local considerations within the district to make a determination about whether the school district will be in support of school choice. The Tewksbury Public Schools has had a long standing history of not participating in school choice. Certainly with current conditions, continual fluctuation in registrations, also with the new building project, adding numbers of school choice students coming in would be very difficult to predict the impact on the district. This might be something the committee could consider after we're up and running with the new school building and we have a more stable look at what our enrollment is. But certainly my recommendation would be the committee stay with its consistent approach of not allowing school choice within the district.
Okay. Mr. Wilson, any comments?
No comments.
Mr. Stadman, do you have any questions or comments regarding the school choice?
No questions or comments at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Cutlass, any questions or comments?
All set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mrs. Demos, any comments or questions?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion at this time?
I make a motion not to participate in school choice for the upcoming school year.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second not to participate in school choice for the school year 2020-2021. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Unanimous vote. We will not be participating in school choice. Thank you, Mrs. Regan.
Sure.
And now to the remote learning plan website, please.
Yes, and I'll remind the members of the committee and you, Mr. Chair, we're going to shut off the grid view. I'm going to present my screen. You'll be able to see it full screen this way. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me get rid of this message down below. All right, what I'm going to be showing you is our remote learning plan website. This homepage articulates the philosophy of our plan, if you will. You'll note that there are 2 letters from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education Commissioner Jeffrey Riley, which actually articulates the advice and guidelines from the department. So the Tewksbury Public Schools Remote Learning Plan is scheduled as advised by the state from April 6th through May 4th. in accordance with those guidelines, you'll see that remote learning plan really focuses on maintaining already learned skills and maintaining connections between students and teachers and between students themselves. As advised by the department, the remote learning plan is not intended to replace the school day, but again, to focus on maintaining those concepts and skills. Traditional grades, as a result, will not occur during remote learning, but there will be feedback produced from the teacher to students and to parents, and then a credit, if you will, or passing assessment will be made on student participation. I also just want to make note that remote learning does not always mean digital. While the content or supports are shared digitally, there are many non-digital options for students and families. Okay, and again, on the homepage, there's a list of expectations. It just really prioritizes what teachers will be doing and what students will be doing during the remote learning plan, as well as the daily expectations. Guidelines from the department tell us that remote learning and student learning should occur for approximately half the student learning day. So for most of our students, that's about 3 hours of learning per day. For our preschool students, it's about an hour to an hour and a half of learning. You'll see that we have also prioritized physical exercise or wellness activity every single day. So what students are experiencing are 90 minutes a day of academic content activities or scheduled academic content activities, 30 minutes a day scheduled for physical exercise or wellness, and 60 minutes a day where there may be a choice between a content-based assignment or a specialist assignment or a combination of both. We realize, and it's prioritized in that schedule, that this should be scheduled flexibly, that meets not only the needs of students and their families, but also trying to meet the needs of our teacher families, people who are at home also doing their job with our students and families with their own kids at home experiencing the same. What happened was we realized that remote learning, as I said earlier in my update, doesn't just happen because somebody has a computer in front of them. We really needed to pay attention quickly to what does digital citizenship mean when kiddos are online at home in maybe a virtual environment with their teacher and their fellow students. So we made amendments to our acceptable use policy and procedures that teachers are reviewing with their students, and we have available on the remote learning plan website for families. And then, of course, you know, one of our district really big goals is that all still means all. You know, our intent was to develop lessons or activities or options that all students can access at some entry point. Without teachers having full access to those students, and especially our support providers, it's really difficult to deliver those supports fully in remote learning. And what we've done is made sure those teachers, our instructional support providers, are also providing supports and lessons, I'll be able to show you a little bit, that maintain skills that were being done, for example, in smaller groups. Students needing translation, our platform is a Google platform. There is Google Translate available in almost all of our docs, and our ESL teachers are reaching out to those families, making sure, one, they have access. Often it's the family and the parent that might need the translation documents more so than the students. So let me walk you through a little bit of the learning resource setup. I'll just start with our early childhood areas, grades K through 2. You can see that at each of the grade bands, our teachers focused on a schedule that was similar to the district expectation, but maybe a little bit more focused and prioritized content areas per day. So again, you'll see all students in grade K through 2 have academic content assigned each day of the week, unless it's a holiday or a day off, like Monday will be. And you can see again that 30 minutes of PE and wellness and self-care is allowable in that 3 hours, if you will, or expected for every student every day. And then they choose a specialist for 30 minutes or an additional content, maybe interest, for the other 30, or 2 specialists. So let me just show you an example in grade 2. I think it's really important too to note that when we started developing the remote learning plan, a really important aspect of the plan for all of our administrators and from the district, advice was, let's make the exact same learning objectives for a student in grade K2 at the Heathbrook the same for students at the Dewing. This was a district remote learning plan. We wanted to make sure to pay special attention that if one of our team members, one of our teachers or one of our district leaders or principals should fall ill in this time, there were supports available to every student in that grade level, not necessarily only their classroom teacher. So we really had families and our own staff families at mind in developing this. So you can see that there's, for this week, there are learning objectives for ELA, for grammar, for math, and for social studies and science. And then as we move down, so each of the days has a specific objective with some options. The specialists, and stop me please if I'm moving too fast, the specialists as well as some of our support specialists have also provided learning objectives for the students to, one, get support for the content area or have a daily objective throughout the week to choose from. So let me go back. I want to just show you what that, I'm sorry. As we move further down the grade level band page, you're going to see that several of our parents also suggested that we leave those enrichment choice boards, those first 2 weeks that schools were shut down, because there was some really rich activities that really did further understanding and give kids some fun activities to do around content they already knew about. And then what we did was left in our file cabinet our remote learning plan from last week, and then all 4 weeks as we proceed will stay in that file cabinet so families can reach back in and perhaps maybe make up something that they hadn't participated in. Additionally, we have these optional printables for parents to use at home if they have a printer at home, because some were asking us, how can I print some of these things? So we found some free optional printables for families. If I go to the grade 5 through 8, again, that grade band planned together. And you can see that what they decided, because of the intensity as we move up the grade band of the content, that each major core content area would focus one day of the week. So students in grades 5 through 8 have their learning objectives in ELA on Monday, their learning objectives for those 90 minutes of content for math on Tuesday, and so forth. You can read the schedule. And then on Friday, the school, just to promote some, SEL and some team-based activity, did have a school-based activity that all students participated in. For example, the Ryan has a STEM activity that will be occurring on Friday this week. And then you can see, similar to the district expectation, we have a PE and wellness period of the day, and then a specialist or choice period of the day. And much like we saw at K2, we're trying to make this easy to maneuver for parents that have students at multiple grade levels. There's the enrichment, there's the free printables, and then there's the file cabinet. Okay, you'll also see at the multiple grade bands our related service home learning choice boards. What our related service educators did, for example, in speech or PT, OT, they looked at what skills were we working on with our students in this grade band, and how could we provide choices that would allow them to maintain the skills they were learning when they were one-on-one or in small groups with us. Now, if I could just move a little bit to the high school, because the high school looks just a little bit different. Because of the wide variety of courses and content at the high school level, they had to look at their full year courses and only semester courses. Because if you think about it, semester 2 only courses only had half of that third quarter to meet. So they realized they really didn't have a lot of content to review with those students, and they needed to keep that semester only course a priority within the schedule. So you'll see that the core content areas have split up that 90 minutes each day. So math, for example, has Monday and Wednesday for their 90 minutes, where social studies has Monday and Thursday, and so on. They have that daily exercise period as well. We hope those students are equally getting up, moving around, getting some physical education review, or even some mindfulness. There's some really wonderful choices that the PE teachers have provided. And then 60 minutes, their 60 minutes is around those semester courses, the 2.5 credit courses. So they choose either 1 or 2 of those semester courses they have that they're currently enrolled in. There's a full description of the remote learning plan as it pertains to the high school only, and supports below are around enrichment, related service, and then obviously reaching out to guidance, because they really help students prepare themselves and set some goals for learning and maintaining that learning at the high school level. Some of the rich resources I know Ms. Demos talked about were, for example, the digital resources. As we started to develop this remote learning plan, and we knew that Chromebooks were going to go home with teachers and students, not all people have direct experience with a Chromebook. It's a lot different than a PC. So we knew we had to start engaging our, not only IT team, but our digital learning coaches in providing virtual PD for parents, PD for students, PD for us. So there's some right from the basic, how to use your Chromebook, how to access the student email and password. Aspen may be a familiar word to many of our parents, but some of them still weren't regular users of our Aspen system. How to use Google Classroom, how to access it, but not only our students, but again, our parents, to see what those lessons and objectives are when they go directly into a classroom. And then Google Meet, how to use a virtual platform at home. So those trainings are ongoing. There's a help desk. So, and I bring this up to your attention because not only students and parents, but our teachers can reach out to that help desk at any time, and our digital resource staff will get back to them and help them out. Obviously, this is a whole lot more than just virtual learning at home. Our families are in need of supports, not only our students and families, but our teacher families. And we engage the help immediately of our Director of Student and Family Support, Ms. Karen Baker O'Brien. And her experiences in her life really came into play here, where she was able to quickly collect all the type of resources a family might need in this type of crisis. So clearly there's the basic needs, food assistance, and then maybe cash and health assistance, but how to engage our community helpers, our fire, our police, our crisis hotlines when maybe a student or family are in need, and they certainly have been a great help to us while we have tried to find families that have disengaged in learning during this time, or even communications with us. So you can see the many available helpful resources she continues to put into not only this document, but by reaching out, for example, to every single family that we have on our free and reduced lunch list to see if we can deliver that lunch to them, if they need food assistance, if they need help moving through the document to get that assistance themselves. While we can't necessarily make it happen, we can certainly steer them all to the right resources that are available to them. So I hope you had an opportunity to look at that. I think it really is the core of what we're trying to do right now, is keep kids engaged, but keep families supported as they do that. And of course, this was brought up a couple of times today, our grab and go lunch and food service team. They've been phenomenal helping families get those lunches. As I said, even getting them out to some of the families who can't get to us in a safe way. And then our FAQs, just the heading shows that these changes continue to be updated on our FAQ page as they happen. And as we learn new information, we cross out, we highlight, and we help parents quickly get to what new information do they need to see in the table of contents. The information we're updating is certainly around student learning, but what about special education and student supports, activities, events, athletics, and then some general questions. So we're trying to make this remote learning plan a support that helps everybody who's reaching out in need. And quickly, also, if people are still in need of help and we're not providing that link on our resource, we're asking that they not only reach out to their building principal, but know when their own educator, whether it's the teacher or instructional support provider or their ESL teacher, when are their office hours and extra help time. All of our teachers have set up 2 hours a day where they're in contact with students and families, and then office time or extra help time where they're available through either a no-tech approach, which could be the telephone, or an email low-tech approach, or then certainly our more higher tech approaches like online platforms like Google Classroom or the virtual meetings. And again, we encourage every single parent and student, if you have a question, reach out to the person that you need to assist you, whether it's the teacher, the principal, or any one of the administrators at the district level. So that really highlights our remote learning plan. I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this time and come back to the meeting to see if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Regan.
You're welcome.
We'll start with Mr. Wilson. Do you have any questions or comments for Mrs. Regan?
All right, just took me a minute to get off mute there. No, I don't have any questions or comments. I had gone through it. Again, I just think it's really thorough. I love the team planning across the district so that the kids are all learning the same or getting enriched in the same way at the same grade levels. And I also love the little extra at the bottom of each sort of group where they have the ability to do extra work and some of that stuff. So I haven't heard any complaints. I continue to hear a lot of positive comments from the community in terms of what we're doing around learning. Early on, people were like, why aren't we doing more? And I think what you guys came out with certainly should have blown them away and had them saying, okay, these guys rolled out the right plan at the right time. So thank you. Great work.
Thank you.
Mr. Stadman?
No, just to continue on the back of that. I mean, to go from nothing, if you will, to something like this that was just as Scott was saying, it's to keep everyone consistent across all the the different elementary schools and such. Like I said, to go from nothing to this, it's in such a short amount of time, it speaks a lot for Tewksbury, and hats off to everyone involved with that, and to be just quick and concise. Like myself, and Scott, I went through it and it was just very click, here you are. It's quick, it's easy, it goes through everything. It's here's the color, you click on this. It's very intuitive, it's quick, easy, your kids can do it. And you do your learning and you follow it down. Like I said, I can't speak highly enough of everyone that was involved to that, and it's fantastic what everyone did in such a short amount of time. So it's nothing, you didn't go ultra high tech and wasn't ultra slick and too crazy. Just make it quick and great job, guys.
Mr. Cutlass?
Yes, I agree with that. Scott and Jonathan, I think Brenda and her team did an excellent job, and it's a good tool in this day and age. And I think she did a great job with that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Cutlass. Mrs. Demos?
Hi, well, you know that how I feel about the plan. It's, it is very user-friendly. It's in-depth. It's thorough. It meets the needs of all the students, between the students who might be struggling with their resource link to those that need to be enriched a little bit and have their access as well. So kudos to all the collaborative efforts that went across the district with the teachers and the staff and the administration. I appreciate the consistency and the collaboration, and thank you for your time.
Great. I'd like to echo the same. I think the words that come to me are clear and concise. I think it's a very clear plan. I think it's easy to read, as everyone said. One thing I really like is the expectations are very clear, what teachers are going to be doing and what's expected of kids. So for me, as a parent that have two in the district, that's really good stuff. So kudos, as everyone said. my colleagues who put the plan together. It's great work. So that was the remote learning plan. I am going to go through one more time. Mr. Wilson, do you have any matters of interest that you would like to discuss this evening?
No, the only thing I would just say is tremendous work by the district. We obviously got to talk to Chris and Brenda and Dave tonight, but I know that the leadership team and the principals and the teachers and the people cleaning the buildings, just the aid, everyone has really pitched in and tried to look for an opportunity to make this successful and make this an enriching experience for the kids. And I'm just proud of what you guys have accomplished. Glad that I can sit back and support you in any way that I can. And, if there's any way that I can pitch in, certainly let me know. But love what you guys are doing, and really proud of everything that you've accomplished. And, depending on how long this goes, we may have some more work to do, but I certainly feel confident in the team that we have assembled to make sure that it goes off without a hitch and that students are being given an opportunity to learn. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Stadman?
I can't see any more than Mr. Wilson did. So
Thank you, Mr. Stadman. Mr. Cutlass?
Neither can I, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Demos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of things I wanted to say. I purchased tickets from the TTA to support the musical bingo event that was canceled. And I have to say, I won big. I got this Somerville basket, and I got a Kyoto's gift card and bottle of wine. So I wanted to have a huge shout out to the TTA for putting that together. And, for all that they're doing to support the students at Tewksbury at this time, their time and effort is greatly appreciated. And my gifts I will be paying it forward.
Right.
I also just wanted to state that, I know these are unprecedented times that we're going through, and I want to thank all the administration, the teachers, the staff, the families for all the collaboration during this time. As they say, we're all in this together. I just hope that everyone out there and their families feel free to reach out if they need any support during this time. And I hope that everyone stays safe and just be well.
Great.
That's
Well
all I
said.
have tonight.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank the teachers and all our staff, the administration, custodial workers, maintenance people, nurses. There's just so much going on. Obviously, our priority is, I'm the internal optimist. I'm hoping mid-May. I'm hoping, that's me, Keith Sullivan speaking, that just an individual person that's very optimistic, okay? I'll say it. I hope we're back into school sooner than later. But in the meantime, please, I'd like everyone to know and understand when they watch this that we're doing everything that we can, that when those students go back, hopefully eventually soon, okay, that they're going to be in a clean, safe environment. Some things may be a little bit different. Things might be changing, but we're doing everything that we can, as you heard tonight, to put things in place to keep kids on track, to keep them learning. The remote learning thing, to me, it's fantastic. It's keeping students engaged. As I said, it's easy to read, it's clear, it's concise, there's expectations. Everyone knows what they should be doing. And with a little bit of supervision, we can really keep our students going. So kudos for that. That comes from not only the superintendent staff, but our teachers that reach out, that I hear stories every day, whether they're, driving to a student's house for a parade, doing some kind of social emotional stuff, or they're emailing, hey, it's your birthday. We know we're not in school, but this is what we're going to do for you, and learning things as well. So we really have a lot to be proud of in Tewksbury. We're a small part of that. I often like to remind people of that. We're just the people up here, unfortunately, that put a face on it. But there's so many countless people in our district that we are really very grateful that we have, that have put us in this real good position that we're in. So with that being said, I'm going to move on to the future school committee and subcommittee meetings. Our next meeting will be May 20th. And that will be a reorganization and a regular meeting. And then the new sitting school committee will also be sitting for the, hopefully hasn't been rescheduled, annual town meeting, which I believe is June 1st and June 3rd. With that, I'm going to move on to any future agenda items. I'm going to start with Mr. Wilson. Do you have any future agenda items for us at this time?
At this time, I have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stadman?
I have nothing.
Mr. Cutlass?
All set, Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Demos?
Mr. Chair, I would just like to recommend that on our next meeting on May 20th, at that point, we should know by the guidance of DESE whether we are returning this school year or if it will be in the fall. I would like for us to discuss our next steps going forward as far as the seniors in high school. We have budgetary line items that are impacted by graduation and prom and other events that are planned. And I just want us to be cognizant of the time periods that we have. I do understand that some of those decisions, quite honestly, may be finished and are decided previous to that meeting, but I would like to have that be added to our May 20th if it has not already been decided before that meeting.
Sure, absolutely. So, Chris, we'll get an update as to all the senior activities that have traditionally take place, and an update as to where they're at. If obviously something had already been canceled due to the time, if we could just get an explanation. And then obviously if something hasn't happened, we certainly could have that discussion on the 20th.
Absolutely. I think we're in a two-pronged approach right now, trying to reschedule events while at the same time trying to find alternative ways to maybe celebrate them or do. So it's kind of a dual-pronged approach. We're hoping that the reschedule will work, but we want to plan for if it doesn't.
Thank
Right.
you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Demos. I have nothing. And for those that may watch this, I'm not sure when they're going to broadcast it. As always, if you do have any agenda items, please feel free to email myself, Mr. Malone, or any of my colleagues here on the school committee, and we'll be more than happy to get that on the agenda. With that being said, it is 7:48. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll
Make
make
that motion.
to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn tonight's first ever virtual school committee meeting at 7:48 p.m. in the evening. Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much for making this a somewhat painless process this evening. So,
Have a great evening.
good night.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe, everybody.
Good night.
Forget how do you shut it off?
You too, Jamie.
Just click.